to think very creatively, to think non-linearly, to think quantum. The quantum dimension we know as opposed to the Newtonian model is very irrational. It is all over the place. It's chaos. Yet there is this harmony. And what was really interesting that I found was that in Japan, they were trying to map out the underground system or the train systems and look at the most effective way of distribution of traffic. And so they looked into nature and they looked into the mycelium, which is this underground network that operates connecting trees and connecting the forest together, and looked at how the mycelium in nature's formation formed the optimal patterns of moving and creating pathways for the distribution of resources. And they modeled their train system on the mycelium, and it actually became very effective. And I think that's the power of modeling our behaviors, our structures, our organizations on anti-structure, on anti-linearity, on chaos, on quantum thinking, and modeling it on how nature is rather than how it fits into our brain. Through the chaos, we're seeing the patterns. Rather than implementing a pattern, we're creating harmony through chaos. Because life is chaos. Nature does not follow rigid rules. If you look at anything in nature and how it grows, it's not pure, triangles and rectangles and circles and squares. It's a creative surge. If you look at the pine cone and how it's created, which comes down to how Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and all ancient ways of healing focused on it was a process of looking at the body and the environment all as one. You're looking at different organs, you're looking at meridians, so you're getting a total picture of the human being in the environment. And now if we apply that model to leadership and to business, we're going to get a very robust understanding instead of this action-reaction. Communication skills are so lacking, especially in the small to medium-sized businesses, because you're working with a limited budget, you're working under tight constraints, you're trying very hard to penetrate a new market. And so you're finding challenges that are not so easy to overcome. And of course, you're going to have heated conversations and you're going to have disagreements. But that's where I show companies how individuals need to have this radical honesty. There has to have this egoless communication. There has to be embodied with the sense of, I can speak my mind and not be judged for what I'm saying. Of course, you don't have to be rude and you don't have to be inconsiderate. But if we don't allow people to have this healthy expression of their unhappiness or their own point of view, then we're blocking a lot of creativity and we're blocking a lot of growth. So for me, a team with the most diverse people and personalities enriches your experience because they may see things that you can't. And so rather than having everybody that you have on your team to be graduates from this business school or has finished this diploma, you have these creative people. And I've seen entrepreneurs that are very clever and creative in their thinking. They get all sorts of people on their board of advisors. They have the ultra creative types. You have the almost, artistic types on there. And then you have these people that see things differently. And it's so many times it has occurred to me where I'm advising a group or a leader, and I said, have you looked at it like this? And they say, no, because that doesn't make sense. I said, well, let's explore this for a second. Let's not say no to it immediately. What happens if this variable was in place and that variable was in place? Could there be a new way of looking at this particular scenario that we're facing? And many of the times they say, wow, I didn't even think about that. So because creativity and coming up with a solution that you can't find requires you to take a step back, and you have to become extremely patient to engage with the process and not just do the usual processes, because our brains are very much conditioned from reaction to response. And what we've got to do is to lengthen that time, to open up new alternatives and new ideas. And that's what I teach very often, is how to, and it's not think outside the box because that's become such a cliche, but to think very creatively, to think non-linearly, to think quantum. The quantum dimension we know as opposed to the Newtonian model is very irrational. It is all over the place. It's chaos. Yet there is this harmony. So our jobs, especially in business and in leadership as well, is to adopt a quantum model, a way of thinking, so that we're thinking through the chaos, we're seeing the patterns. Rather than implementing a pattern, we're creating harmony through chaos. Because life is chaos. Nature does not follow rigid rules. If you look at anything in nature and how it grows, it's not pure, triangles and rectangles and circles and squares. It's a creative surge. If you look at the pine cone and how it's created, it has this perfect creation. Even though it's not square, the pine cone is one of the most incredible formations of holding heat and holding substance within. And many things in nature actually replicate the pine cone model. So what we did there was that we looked at the chaos in this model of how nature was creating this, and we say, where do we find the harmony in all of this? And what was really interesting that I found was that in Japan, they were trying to map out the underground system or the train systems and look at the most effective way of distribution of traffic. And so they looked into nature and they looked into the mycelium, which is this underground network that operates connecting trees and connecting the forest together, and looked at how the mycelium in nature's formation formed the optimal patterns of moving and creating pathways for the distribution of resources. And they modeled their train system on the mycelium, and it actually became very effective. And I think that's the power of modeling our behaviors, our structures, our organizations on anti-structure, on anti-linearity, on chaos, on quantum thinking, and modeling it on how nature is rather than how it fits into our brains, because our brains are very rational and we have left and right brain. And so also it's about changing our perspective. So we have two ways of looking at any object. We have the foveal vision and then we have the peripheral vision. And so when you engage with foveal vision, your focus is just on the object. And when you're in peripheral vision, you're seeing everything around, including the object. And many have said that that is engaging your subconscious. So your subconscious can perceive in the environment millions of times more things than what the conscious mind can. The conscious mind zooms in and targets. Now, all your conscious attention is on just that object. But when you're engaging the subconscious or you're engaging the peripheral vision, you're encompassing the entire environment. Think about driving a car. You're there in the car and you're changing gears. Now, if your focus is on the changing of the gears, you may miss the clutch, you may miss the steering wheel. So first, when we're learning something, we go into conscious mode. We say, okay, put the clutch in here, turn the indicator and all the rest of it. And that's when we then outsource it to the unconscious or the subconscious, and the subconscious then takes over. And so you're sitting there driving and you could be sipping on a cup of coffee, which is not a good idea, or having a conversation, which can be a good idea, depends on the nature of the conversation. And all of that is happening at the subconscious level, and it's taking care of so many tasks, which is what your body is doing internally. It's doing hundreds of millions of processes at the same time. Your heart beating, the liver cleansing, all sorts of functions that are happening at such a deep level, yet you're not aware of it. Just like the mycelium, redistributing, vital resources and nutrients to everywhere in the forest. And that's why you see in the forest, everything looks green and splendid. But how is all of this happening so beautifully where you look around and you see a perfectly green forest? Well, that's the mycelium playing their part. Of course, there's many other processes as well happening in nature. This is all happening very organically and with nature. So if we can apply that to business and take on that natural progress and looking at patterns in nature, looking at patterns within our work, even looking at patterns within ourselves. What triggers us all the time? What gets us anxious? Instead of fighting that in the old Newtonian model of cause and effect, which is very useful, you start examining, you start observing. And I think a lot of leaders just jump into and trying to fix a problem instead of saying, but hold on, what created the problem? And what are the variables that are replicating or causing this problem to occur over and over again? Which comes down to how Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and all ancient ways of healing focused on it was a process of looking at the body and the environment all as one. So rather than isolating a particular thing, okay, well, you're sneezing, give them an anti-allergy tablet. You're looking at the environment, you're looking at your body, you're looking at different organs, you're looking at meridians. So you're getting a total picture of the human being in the environment. And now if we apply that model to leadership and to business, we're going to get a very robust understanding instead of this action-reaction type of thing, which then leads to fatal flaws and fatal mistakes because we're not encompassing the entire environment. We may say, well, the employee is the problem, get rid of that guy and all the problems will get solved. You get rid of that guy and another problem has arisen because you're not looking at it in the totality. So sometimes the whole system is rotten rather than the individual employee. And so when you look at this organically and holistically, we get a very enriching experience that then helps us to navigate the future in a more diverse, more rich, and more wholesome way.